A word about reconciliation, too soon or at the wrong time, to the oppressors, only grants them more power to oppress Black people. These words were written by one of the most influential people within the history of Black theology, a man by the name of James Cone. Written in the heights of Black Power between the leaders of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, Cone sought to examine the Bible in a way that embraced the marginalized and the oppressed. What started in those early years blossomed into a field of Christianity that is on the forefront of both academia and activism. Stay tuned as we examine the life and impact of James Cone. James Hal Cone was born on August 5, 1938, into the segregated town of Bearden, Arkansas. Cone's family were members of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, often called AME. Although born into a segregated community, his family and other church members helped Cone to become proud of who he was and proud of his skin color. Cone's confidence in being a Black man would lay the foundation for work that he would pursue for the rest of his life. After graduating from high school, he attended a junior college named Shorter College before changing and obtaining a Bachelor of Arts degree from Philander Smith College in 1958. These were both pivotal times in Cone's life. First, he married Rose Hampton, and second, he met James and Alice Boyack, white professors of religion and philosophy. Cone struggled with the predominantly white learning environment, but Alice and James helped reassure him that he didn't have to conform to succeed in life. Cone clarified throughout his life that he never felt bad for being Black, and he never wished to be white. But the Boyacks made him feel more comfortable about making waves and going against the people-pleasing nature he had had at one point. Because of this renewed mindset, Cone went on to obtain a Bachelor of Divinity degree from Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary in 1961. 2 more years later, in 1963, he received a Master's of Philosophy and, in 1965, a Doctorate of Philosophy, both from Northwestern University. After graduating from Northwestern, Cone dabbled in preaching, but it was clear that teaching was what he had been called to do. He taught at some local colleges while he was working on his first book, and in 1970, he was hired on to teach theology and religion at Union Theological Seminary. But the first book that I just mentioned would catapult James Cone into the limelight and the discussion of many in the United States. We won't break out and talk about all the books and articles written by Cone, as that would take a long time with 12 books and roughly 150 articles to his name. But Black Theology and Black Power has not only been influential in the life of Cone, but is at the center of the Black Theology movement. Cone did not coin the phrase Black Theology, but it was within this book that Cone took the term to another level. This book was steeped within the Black Power movement, and even today, it should be read within that mindset. The simple fact is that this book, for better or for worse, is extreme in many ways. Cone called out American Christianity as white supremacy theology and stated that Black Power is Christ's central message to 20th century America. He popularized the phrase, God is Black, referring to the fact that God identifies with African Americans because of their struggle with racism. Cone drew a line in the sand and stated that a white person must become Black to be a Christian. Of course, he did not mean literally. Still, Cone said that he could not understand how anyone could do Christian theology in America without talking about the Black struggle for freedom, and how anyone could do Christian theology in general without talking about the oppressed. We will dive into why Cone's early theology drew so many lines in the sand, but for now, you need to realize that in this time, African Americans were being abused, mistreated, looked down upon, and even killed for simply being Black. It was important for him that Black theology was not just a discussion within an ivory tower. This battle was being fought in the streets, in the homes, in politics, and also within the schools. If you have not read it, I strongly encourage you to read it for yourself within the context that it was written. We will talk about the impact of this book's theology as we return to the life of Cone. His time at Union Theological Seminary would not end until the end of his life much later. It was 7 years after first taking the job that he was awarded the Charles Augustus Briggs Chair in Systematic Theology in 1977. He had been making a name for himself and introduced Black theology to many new Union Seminary students. But it was also in 1977 that he and his wife Rose would divorce after having 2 children. Although 77 was filled with many ups and downs, Cone pressed on, and 2 years later he would marry again to Sandra Gibson. This, unfortunately, would not last long, as 4 years later, in 1983, Gibson would pass away, and Cone would stay a widower for the rest of his life. His intellectual trajectory would continue to rise, writing numerous books and articles, most notably works such as The Spirituals and the Blues, For My People, Black Theology and the Black Church, The Cross and the Lynching Tree, and his last book that was more autobiographical in nature was Said I Wasn't Gonna Tell Nobody, The Making of a Black Theologian, which came out the year of his death in 2018. Cone has mentioned in many of his writings and speeches that he knew very early on that if he only stayed in the university's walls, only talking to those interested in high intellectual conversations, he would be missing the point of Black theology. From the very beginning, he made an effort not just to teach in the university, but also to be thoroughly integrated in the everyday lives of the millions of African Americans in the United States. Cone's approach to theology and change started on the front lines. Cone never held back, whether teaching his students at Union, preaching from the pulpit of an AME Church, or simply talking to the person walking down the road. This approach gave the movement of Black theology a unique perspective and laid the foundation for so many people behind him to combine intellectual work with people's practical lives. Cone would continue this way of working, being elected into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences days before his death on April 28, 2018. Cone worked with Union all the way up until his death, molding the minds of 40 years worth of students. The legacy of Cone and Black theology has been extremely influential over the years, but that doesn't mean it hasn't changed. In this section, I want to give an overview of how exactly the theology has changed and adapted, how Cone answered criticism, and ultimately how he approached Black theology at the end of his life. What about reconciliation? From the very beginning, Cone was criticized for his seeming lack of reconciliation. Many pointed at MLK's approach to reconciliation as ideal and suggested that Cone misled many Black youths down the wrong path. James Roberts, a fellow Black theologian, criticized the lack of reconciliation between Blacks and whites, claiming that Cone gave young Black men a stone when all they needed was bread. This common criticism stayed with Cone for many years, but this doesn't quite get at the reason why Cone wrote Black theology in the first place. Cone said, "A word about reconciliation too soon or at the wrong time to the oppressors only grants them more power to oppress Black people." It wasn't that Cone felt that there would never be reconciliation. For him, until Blacks were to be seen as equal and the system of white supremacy combated, no reconciliation attempt would be successful. Ultimately, after many years, Cone would indeed start to open the door for reconciliation. However, he made it clear that this was not a glossing over of the issue. He still held to the statements that whites must be immersed within Black culture of oppression and embrace this form of Christianity for true reconciliation to happen. What about inclusiveness? The second most criticized part of Cone's theology is the lack of inclusiveness within his early works and efforts. For Cone, his original fight was for African American males. Although he fought hard for this group, there were many that he did not acknowledge as equally, this being mostly African American females and the LGBTQ community. Cone struggled with what many other liberation theologians struggle with even today. He believed that if the group he represented, here talking about African American males, were to have control, then all other people's issues would be fixed. However, this thought changed in his later years as the liberation movement has sought to build bridge theologies instead of tower theologies. This means that throughout his life, Cone has sought to adapt Black theology to represent more than just Black males, but the oppression of the minorities that have been impacted by what he claims is white oppression. Although this was met with much positivity within the communities, many still note that each group of minorities have their own struggles against society and history. Dolores Williams brought up one of the most significant issues when she said that Black women struggle with much more than their male partners. Not only have they dealt with racism, but also sexism from both whites and Blacks. Womanist theology response places Black women's experience and the idea at the center of analysis. and seeks to differentiate the struggle and the success that occur outside of the generalized minority oppression that it is often generalized as. Although it can't be stated exactly how Cone would have answered to this group early in his life, it is evident that later in his life he embraced the different approaches taken by different groups. Although he fought hard for Black theology, he ultimately expanded his reach and fought against the diminishing of other minority groups. In this way, the term Black theology represented something much greater than it did years earlier. What about white Christians? The last criticism that we will discuss here comes from the perspective of white Christians. If you've made it this far in the video, you have hopefully understood the term Black theology in context and meaning that Cone and many of his peers have had over the years. You might likely have came into this video having a misunderstanding of the topic, as many seminaries simply ignored Cone in his early years as radical and impractical. Many seminaries either do not teach or teach the information in a way that does not paint the true nature, especially in modern times, about the goal of Black theology. Although Cone was very harsh in his early rhetoric about white Christianity, ultimately, Black theology does not seek to make non-blacks inferior. Instead, its intention is to bring to light the struggles that blacks have had to deal with, and challenge those who have the power to change what they can to make things equal. So, if you are white and feel attacked by Cone, please know that this is not because he is a racist or he hates your skin. He simply wants you to understand the struggles his people have gone through. Cone addressed this issue many times, saying he loves white people and that his goal is not to divide, but rather to invite people into what it means to be a Black Christian in the United States. It is impossible to measure the impact that James Cone has had on the world today. His first book, Black Theology and Black Power, laid the foundation upon which Black theology would grow and develop within the liberation theology movement in the U.S. It is not far-fetched to say that much of what we associate with race issues today, both theologically and secularly, without Cone in his early work would not be the same. One of the most essential parts of Cone's legacy comes in the fact that for 40 years he continued to educate and train young individuals at Union Seminary. Within these graduating classes, Cone was able to reach all levels and areas of the world with the message of Black theology. As far as the world has come in the past 50 years, the message that Cone and the community have developed within Black theology is still important and critical today. There are many resources available from Cone and on the issues of Black theology. If you're interested, I suggest you access some of the sources in the description below. But let me know what you think about James Cone in the comments section below. Did this video change how you view him, or is there something I missed out on the short overview of his life and work? I look forward to hearing from you in the comments section below, and I will see you again next time with another informative and accessible introduction.